With the latest continuation of the Conjuring franchise hitting theaters everywhere today, a lot of folks are amped up for the next big scare. Number 3 of the mainline movies, The Devil Made Me Do It, drops the haunted house theme in favor of a courtroom drama meets paranormal investigation. It's a departure from what made the series famous, but stuff has to change to grow, right? Of course, no movies make it this big without their fair share of influences, and The Conjuring 3 wears some of these on its sleeve. In fact, director Michael Chavez is pretty straightforward with his love for other horror movies. So let's take a look and see if we can't find some hidden details you might not have noticed. It's time for the top 5 Easter eggs you missed in The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It. Coming in at number 5, A Nightmare Off Elm Street. We'll start with this one because it garnered quite a bit of attention in the trailer. That's right, this iconic homage and terrifying moment made its way into the previews. If anything, that should tell you how scary the rest of the movie should be. Early on, we meet a young lad named David Glatzel. This poor child does not know what's about to happen to him. While hanging out on a waterbed, he starts to notice something going awry. The aquatic sleeping apparatus starts to contort violently, and eventually a grotesque human hand flies up and grabs the kid. Terror all around. This is the event that kickstarts the rest of the movie as David's exorcism sends the demon into Arnie Johnson. But why did the demon choose David? Kids don't really know how to summon demons. Well, as it turns out, there is a cursed object beneath the waterbed, and David was the person unlucky enough to come face to face with the demon. Now, there's no denying the direct connection between this scene and the one in Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Folks with a degree from Freddy Krueger U will immediately see where this inspiration came from. In The Dream Master, teenager Joey experiences what one might call a wet dream, where a lovely lady appears inside of the blue lagoon that is his waterbed. Joey's a little too enthusiastic, and Freddy Krueger pulls a fast one on him, popping up in the model's place and drowning the poor kid. Of course, 8-year-old David Glatzel wasn't interested in any attractive women under his bed, he was just trying to hang out. But director Michael Chavez did say that Nightmare on Elm Street did play a part in inspiring this scene. In fact, The Dream Master is one of the first horror movies he remembers watching. So even if the context isn't one-to-one, the waterbed is an image from the 80s that stuck out in his mind and seemed to be the perfect fit for a movie set in 1981. You wonder why waterbeds went out of style, right? Well, this might have something to do with it. That and having to run a hose to your bedroom. There's something about it that just isn't right. Coming in at number 4, Father Gordon. If we're focusing on references to other horror, then we'll stick with that theme for a while longer. When you think of the word exorcism, what do you imagine? If anything other than the Friedkin classic comes to mind, you've got to get your priorities straight. This, of course, is exactly what Chavez was imagining when putting together this movie. When an exorcist makes the journey to the Glatzel household, there is only one way to introduce this holy man, with an homage to Father Merrin. The arrival in the dark, the fog, the back bumper of the taxi, the briefcase, the hat, the coat, it all comes together in a lovingly detailed recreation of one of the most iconic shots of all time. If you doubt the authenticity of my claim, you can look right to the director of The Conjuring 3 himself. That's right, he's come forward and happily admitted to this being a shameless Exorcist reference. Horror buffs can pick out stuff like that from miles away. Even the exorcism of David contains a whole bunch of Exorcist-style stuff. We've got the young child unfortunately battling a demon and a bunch of horrific contortions. No demonic puke or head spinning this time though, and Father Gordon seems a bit better equipped to deal with the demonic entity than Father Merrin was. Hopefully the filming of this exorcism was a little less chaotic than its influence. Looking back at the production of Friedkin's Exorcist, a lot went wrong and resulted in some people getting hurt. We've come a long way in terms of on-set safety since, so we can probably assume that they made sure not to repeat the harmful incidents during his homage. Coming in at number 3, Flowers from Your Friends. This one might have flown by a little quickly, but some eagle-eyed movie watchers picked up on it regardless. There's a bouquet of flowers that makes a short appearance on camera, sent from a family that folks might recognize. If you take a closer look, you'll see that they were sent by the Perron family. Who could that be, you might ask? Well, hopefully you watched the first 2 movies in the series before diving into The Conjuring 3. You can probably skip the spin-offs and still have a good understanding of what's going on, but the mainline ones? Come on, be a completionist. The Perrons are the family from the first Conjuring movie who lived in that horribly haunted home on Rhode Island. At first, their haunting wasn't so bad. Folks told them to keep their lights on at night, and at times their kids would get tucked in by friendly ghosts. once. But as time went on, things got much worse. More spirits started appearing, and these ones were not very friendly. Kids would be attacked by unseen entities, and phantoms would send them horrifying messages of death and gloom. Ed and Lorraine stepped in though and did what they could for the family. It's fun to see that the folks behind these flicks keep the Warrens' contacts and previous clients in the loop. Coming in at number 2, The Nun makes an appearance. You know, Valak, the creepy nun who appears first in The Conjuring 2 and then in her own spin-off. Dark robes, pale skin, horrifying demonic eyes. You know her. What do you mean you didn't see her in The Conjuring 3? Oh, you know what? I should have been more clear. The nun herself doesn't make an appearance, but a little itty-bitty version of her does. I'm talking about a nun doll. Who would want such a thing? Beats me. But Arnie, our poor defendant, actually owns a tiny nun doll. In his room above the boarding kennels, there is a toy nun on his bookshelf. Now, this could just be a cheeky little reference to the other movies, because I highly doubt that Arnie Johnson has any actual connection to the nun before he was possessed and visited by the Warrens. But it is an interesting little detail, and one that'll make any trivia-focused fan lose their mind. Why would he have a toy nun in the first place? Who wants a toy nun? Is this foreshadowing? Will it make another appearance somewhere soon? We may never know. Or maybe we will. And finally at number 1, Psycho Killer. Or I guess just Psycho. See, there are a lot of references to classic horror in this movie. As we've already discussed, director Michael Chavez has no problem admitting to this and even sees it as a fun way to engage the audience. Let's be real. Horror fans love pointing out when something is pulled from another movie. It's in our blood. I think the only fans who have us beat are comic book fans, but then again, like, crossover events are like their whole thing. Let's focus up here. Back to poor young Glatzel. He manages to have an Elm Street experience and a Bates Motel experience too. While in the shower, our young pal gets a deluge of blood straight to the dome. Probably not chocolate syrup like in the Hitchcock classic, but hey, this is followed up by a much more subtle nod. Again, when the father arrives for the exorcism. However, this has nothing to do with the movie The Exorcist. This is a definite Psycho reference. If you look closely, there's a figure in the window. Shades of Mother Bates looking down from her perch above the Bates Motel. Chavez wasn't so sure he could keep this bit in, saying, "When we screened it, I was on the verge of cutting it out. I was like, it's too on the nose. You're just shamelessly stealing from the greatest movie of all time." But I kept it, and I was glad I did, because when we started screening it, people loved it. They loved being able to see those references and make those connections. And hey, you know what? It looks like it worked. No better way to get some free and easy good reactions than by referencing something that everybody likes. Kinda like that time in Cabin in the Woods. Well, that's a lot of Easter eggs, but who doesn't love a good hunt, right? So, what'd you think of the list? Did you pick up on all these moments in the movie? Have you seen The Devil Made Me Do It yet? What's your favorite of the 3 Conjurings? What about the spin-offs? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more gregarious ones from the top 5 scary demons that are real, part 4. Faulty Gear says, "I love when you present entities from other cultures. It's a wonderful insight into the mindsets of different people. It also shows how some elements like the notion of the evil eye or vampirism are pretty much universal. I think it's safe to assume that every culture has at least one blood-sucking creature, mostly preying on pregnant people/newborns. I guess it was a popular pick when it came to explaining miscarriages, stillbirths, and high infant mortality. The human experience is pretty universal now, isn't it?" Kami Tenchi says, "A demon quickly possessed me at night after watching satanic African movies on YouTube. Better quickly than slowly, right?" The Horned King says, "European vampires weren't seductive until authors started to portray them like that in the 1800s. In most myths, they were basically zombies that rose from their graves at night to feed on the blood of the living, and then returned to their graves again before dawn. They were also blamed for spreading plagues and disease." Yeah, they're always looking for a way to leech off us in one way or another, huh? And Alina Violetta Georgescu says, "My dad's a lawyer." Subtle flex? Not so subtle flex. And that's the time we have for today. I'm going to adopt a baby alligator and commit to never flushing it down the toilet. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.